Hello, my name's Myra. I'm 31 years old. Before I tell you my story, let me just get this out of the way. I come from a very privileged background, and so does my husband. However, unlike my parents, we are grateful and appreciative of the opportunities that our wealth has given us. And we do not use our wealth as a reason to look down on others. Now, onto our revenge on my parents. Like I said, I come from a pretty wealthy family, but ours is not any generational wealth. My family lived in the middle class for a long time. My parents had their own jobs while simultaneously trying to run a company of their own. When I was 7, my parents decided to quit their day jobs and focus on their business. The next 3 to 4 years were the hardest years. There would be days when I would go to bed without having seen my parents at all during the day. They focused everything on their business. I held a grudge against them for neglecting me for the longest of times because, come on, you cannot possibly expect a child to fend for themselves at that age. But they made up for it when their business took off. In fact, they overdid it. Their business took off in a big way, and pretty soon we were swimming in money. My parents loved to attend these big elite parties that were meant only for the high-class socialites. These were torture to me, but I had no choice. I counted down the days till I turned 18 just so I could get out of staying any longer with my parents, because it didn't take long for them to become the very snobs they hated before they were rich. When I turned 18, I got into a great university in my state and I ran there. And that was where I met my husband Daniel. Now, at that time, neither of us dressed or acted like we were rich. We had a pure organic chemistry between us, and it was only after we were together for about 5 months that we told each other our backgrounds and were completely shocked about how our families ran in the same social circles, except his family was a lot richer than mine. Daniel's father, Cyril, was one of the richest men in our state. Cyril preferred to not expose his personal life to his professional one, so not a lot of people knew about his family. That explained why I didn't know Daniel. Not to mention, Daniel absolutely hated being famous, so he did his best to stay out of the spotlight. Anyway, we dated for around a year before we decided to introduce each other to our parents. We met his parents first, and they were lovely and very accepting of me. When it came time to meet my parents, we arranged to meet up at their favorite restaurant. "Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. This is Daniel." "Hi, Daniel. I'm Norman, and this is my wife, Margot. It's a pleasure to meet you." "It's a pleasure to meet you, too." "So, Daniel, what are you pursuing right now?" "I'm doing media and communication." "And what do you plan on doing with that?" "Mom, Dad, this isn't a job interview, so stop interrogating him." No, it's okay. I plan on becoming a social media manager." "Oh, that's a profession for sure." "Dad, there's no need to be so judgmental." "Tell me, Daniel, did you grow up in wealth?" "Mom, that is an incredibly offensive thing to ask." "Oh, so the answer is no. I mean, I could tell just by looking at him." "I don't mean to sound rude, but if you don't mind me asking, what does my wealth have anything to do with my relationship with Myra?" "Why, it's everything. We worked really hard to be able to give her a life filled with as many luxuries as she wanted. We don't want her to have to live like a peasant after she gets married." "That is enough. I don't care about any of that. I love Daniel, and that's all that matters. You're just young and naive. This relationship will end as soon as you realize that this man will never be able to afford your lifestyle." "Are you serious?" "Look, no offense to you, Daniel, but my daughter deserves better than you." "I don't know how you want me to not take offense to that." "Myra, there's this handsome man we met the other day at a party. He's a few years older, but hugely successful. We think you'll really like him. Do you want us to set you up with him?" "Wow! How dare you insult my boyfriend and also try to set me up with someone else while he's sitting next to me?" "Look, You have to realize that your relationships affect our reputation. You need to choose men that will not only benefit you, but will also benefit your reputation in society. Daniel won't do anything for you. I've had enough. You passed your judgments on Daniel before even getting to know him. I think we know his type enough. He is not a type. He is a person with his own personality, qualities, and feelings. The fact that you can't see that because you're so blinded by your need to keep up with social status is disgusting. Do not bother to talk to me unless you want to apologize. Myra, you will sit back down right this minute. You are causing a scene. See what this Daniel is doing to you? You never behaved like this before. This is not Daniel's doing. I've just reached my limit with you two. I grabbed Daniel's hand and stormed out of the restaurant. I couldn't believe how fast they were in passing that judgment. They barely even got to know him and immediately marked him as some inferior being. I knew that I wanted nothing to do with them after that. I apologized to Daniel profusely after that, and Daniel told me that I had nothing to apologize for. He admitted that he knew he didn't look like he was rich, but he did not expect my parents to be like that. I agreed with him. I didn't speak to my parents unless I absolutely had to until I graduated. Daniel and I were still going strong, and we moved in together after graduating. We focused on our individual careers before taking any other step in our relationship. Daniel decided to work in a bunch of other places before going to work for his dad, just so he could get a feel of what the competition's like. That also helped him remain away from the spotlight for as long as he wanted. Eventually my parents reached out to me and Daniel and apologized for being so rude to Daniel. We accepted their apology, but we still maintained low contact with them. I knew that they still did not accept Daniel, and they only apologized to keep up social appearances. Every once in a while, they'd invite Daniel and me to one of their parties, and we'd show up out of courtesy. And every time we attended, my mom would look Daniel up and down in disgust. He was wearing branded and expensive clothes, by the way, all brands that my parents loved to wear, except that his clothes weren't plastered with the brand logo all over them, so my parents thought they were cheap clothes. Anyways, after about 3 years from graduating college, Daniel proposed to me. I was overjoyed, and of course I said yes. We told his family about our engagement together, but I asked him if I could tell my parents about it alone. Deep down, I knew that they would say something mean, and I didn't want Daniel to hear it, so I went over to my parents' place for dinner one night and told them that I had something to tell them. So, I need to tell both of you something. Oh, please, for the love of God, tell me that you broke up with that pathetic boyfriend of yours. Actually, we're engaged. I'm going to marry him next spring. What? No, you're not. Well, I wasn't asking for your permission. You should have. You know how we feel about him. You don't like him because you think he doesn't have money. That's not a valid reason. If you marry him, you have to come to all of our events with him. Do you know how embarrassing that is? Do you care that much about your reputation? Does my happiness not matter at all? You have no idea how hard we worked to get where we are today. We sacrificed everything, and we'll be darned before we let a man of Daniel's status let us down. I know exactly how much you sacrificed. I was there. I had to live for years without my parents there for me. For people who look down on someone they think is in the middle class, you sure seem to forget that you were once there. And we overcame it. Daniel doesn't have the skills or the ability to work himself up anywhere. Why can't you just see that we want what's good for you? You don't want what's good for me. You just want what's good for you. Don't throw your issues at me. Look, we're very open-minded, but this is where we draw the line. We never imposed our opinions on you when you were dating Daniel because we just thought that the relationship was a fling. But this we cannot accept. That's a straight lie. You two are the least open-minded people I know. And you've done nothing but tell me how bad Daniel is for me for the entirety of my relationship. I don't care about whether you accept the fact that I'm marrying him because it's happening and you can't do anything about it. We can do something about it. If you marry this man, you will no longer be our daughter. Wow. So you'll disown me if I don't listen to you? You'd rather disown your daughter to save your social status than be happy that she's happy? That is not it at all. We want what's best for you, and if you can't see it, then I see no reason why we should support you. I'd like to see how your poor husband will support you. He's done way more for me than the two of you ever did. How dare you? We gave you this life. Don't you dare say that we didn't do the best for you. While I am grateful for everything you did, neither of you ever cared about my happiness. Daniel makes me so happy, and I want to spend the rest of my life with him. So go ahead, disown me. Lord knows I'll be happier that way, because believe me, I cannot stand going to any more of your obnoxious parties. I'd like to see how this happiness of yours pays the bills, and don't you dare come to us when you need any help with money, because we will not help. I'd rather be drowning in poverty than come to you guys for help. I left my parents' place immediately. I was fuming, yet at the same time I was so incredibly hurt. I was not stupid enough to believe that my parents would readily just accept him, but what I was stupid enough to believe was that my parents experienced some change in the past 3 years and maybe some observation of how I was with Daniel. They would be more open to just accepting that Daniel is an integral part of my life. I drove away and parked a few blocks away before finally letting myself cry. I know I love to put on a tough act, but they were still my parents. Sure, they were snobby and they could be really mean, but I still loved them. And it hurt to see that their love for me was so conditional. That is literally the one thing that parents aren't supposed to have, conditional love. I eventually made my way back home and let Daniel comfort me. He was incredibly mad at my parents and asked me if I wanted him to do something about it. I didn't want him to do anything against my parents because I saw no reason to become just like them to prove a point. I decided then and there that the best way to get back at my parents was to live happily. That was what they didn't think I was capable of, so I would prove them wrong. Daniel and I spent the next few months having the time of our lives as we planned our wedding. On the day of the wedding, I was the happiest girl alive. Daniel asked his dad, Cyril, to keep our marriage a private affair because he didn't like the limelight, and neither did I. Cyril was happy enough to do that, although he spoiled us rotten with some of the most expensive gifts as compensation. After we got married, Daniel took up a permanent role at his father's company and became the head of the social media marketing team. Not to brag, but Daniel was bringing in loads of money, especially because he was bringing more attention to the company. I was also advancing pretty far in my career, and I was doing great. I didn't speak to my parents at all, not only because I didn't want to, but also because they never reached out to apologize. Over the next 5 years, Daniel and I only had a great time. We were doing amazing in our careers, and our social lives were also doing well. Daniel was slowly warming up to the idea of becoming a part of the limelight, and so we began attending a lot more parties that were arranged for the high socialites. At these parties, we would run into a few of my parents' friends who would ask me about them, and Daniel would reply and subtly imply that they weren't the kindest of people. Now, this was just a petty move that we didn't think would have any impact, but apparently it did, because my parents were slowly being shunned by their social circles. The only reason I knew that it was working was because I met them at Daniel's sister's engagement party. Daniel's sister wanted a big, extravagant party for only the most elite of society and made it a very exclusive party. Daniel and I were obviously invited, and we happened to run into my parents there. Myra, Daniel, what on earth are you two doing here? Well, we got an invite and we thought it would have been pretty rude to not show up. How did you get an invite to this party? This is an engagement party for business tycoon and millionaire Cyril Reed. Are you sure you're at the right place? We're sure we're at the right place. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have places to be and people to socialize with. No, hold on. How did you both get invited here? This is a party only for the elites of our city. And last time I checked, you barely even came close to middle class. Do you really have no shame putting your daughter down like that? What daughter? This could have been you, but you gave it all up for this creature. Wait, that's it. Myra must have got an invite in our name, and then Daniel made you not tell us and instead take him with you. That would explain why he had to go around practically begging to get in here. Do you really think I'd want to attend any party if I got the invite for you? Sure, I wouldn't pass the invite on, but I would never attend the party because that would mean that the people there would all be rich snobs just like you. Okay, that's enough. You will tell us how you got these invites or we will call security on you. The chances that two of you just crashed into this event are too high. I mean, what more do you expect from the lower classes? Hi there. What is this I'm hearing? Is my son causing any trouble? Son? Yes, this is my boy, Daniel. Oh, these two were just accusing my wife and I of crashing this event because we were part of a lower class who was only capable of doing things like that. Oh, no, that's not what we meant. But I do want to know how Daniel is your son. You don't have the same last name. Yes, my wife wanted him to have her last name. Feminism and all that. Anyway, he's my pride and joy. He's a fine young man. I would ruin anyone that hurts him in any way. So, do we have a problem here? Only one. Why do Daniel and his wife not have glasses of champagne in their hands? I like that. They can get their glasses of champagne along with me. I need them to meet a few people. Excuse me. The look of absolute shock and horror on my parents' faces made Daniel and I laugh as we walked away. Cyril knew of my parents and their views about his son, but once again, out of respect for me, he never said a word. He only came on between our conversations with my parents as a petty act of asserting dominance. Daniel and I enjoyed the rest of the night and made sure to celebrate his sister and her fiancé to the fullest. We socialized a lot and I actually ended up making some really good friends. I was finally free of my parents' snobby behavior and I felt great. Daniel and I tried our best to stay out of my parents' way, but that didn't work for too long. Towards the middle of the event, my parents found us and came up to us to talk. Hey, guys! Could we talk for just a few minutes? Oh, I don't know. My dad expects me to be there with him. Yeah, about that. How come you never told us who your dad was? I didn't see why I had to. Besides, you already made up your mind about him, so was there really any use of him telling you who his father was? Of course there is. Do you even know how much power that man has? Wait a minute. Is this why we've been slowly getting fewer invitations to various social events? How would we know? Are you really ruining our lives because we didn't know whose son you were? No, that's not why. You treated us like we were lowlives, just because you assumed that we were part of the middle or lower class. That is unacceptable, and we see no reason for you to have any sort of social life until you prove yourselves to be better people. Who are you to decide that? You return us back to our previous status or else. Or else what? You're going to try and ruin our name? Good luck doing that. Hold on. We're sorry. We called you over here just so we could talk to you and apologize, and we're letting our negative emotions get in the way. We shouldn't have treated you that way. Daniel, could we make it up to you in any way? Oh, you most definitely could. I want you to leave my sister's engagement party right this minute. What? But we worked so hard to get the invites to this event. I worked hard to show you that I cared and loved your daughter, and instead you rewarded me by not only treating me poorly but also disowning your daughter? My father is a kind and genuine man, and he would hate to know that such vile people attended an event of his. Just give us some time to change. I promise we'll be better people. The time to prove yourself has long since passed. Get out, or I will have security come get you. And you know how people will start talking when they see security escorting you out. You're a cruel person. I'm definitely not as cruel as you. Now get out. I was in awe of the way that Daniel stood up for himself. I knew that he was only holding himself back because he didn't want to humiliate my parents out of respect for me. But if there was one thing he hated more than anything in the world, it was people who treated others based on what they would get in return. And that is the textbook definition of what my parents are like. My parents thankfully left the event without another word. They knew better than to have any more attention drawn to them. My parents texted me after they left to apologize for the way that they treated Daniel. Once again, they were only apologetic because they didn't know who he was. They still did not see the wrong in their ways, and that only made me madder. I could understand how some people could be so dense and ignorant. That was the reason why I didn't stop Daniel from doing what he did after. It didn't take long for people, especially my parents' friends, to notice that my parents weren't around at the party. They would ask me, and Daniel would reply. He'd tell them about how he kicked them out and why he did so. People were horrified to learn what my parents were really like. A lot of them stopped associating with them afterwards. My parents barely saw invitations to any place else after that party. They called Daniel and begged him many times to make things right for them. They apologized in many ways, but Daniel stood firm in his decision. He'd given them years to be nicer, but they didn't care to. He saw no reason for them to not suffer for just a little while. My parents' company began to slowly lose out on revenue. Their company depended on these events because they would be the ones supplying most of the things and services required for these events. And since they had become a pariah, nobody wanted to tarnish their own reputation by associating with them. When they realized that they were losing money, my parents stopped begging us and began cursing us. They would send us long, hateful texts outlining why I'm such a disappointment to them and how I ruined our family. It hurt at first, but at the same time it felt great to finally put my parents back in their place. As for Daniel and I, we're doing great. We pretty much went back to living our lives as normally as we could after the event and barely bothered to bat my parents and I. We're planning on taking a vacation to Spain within the next 2 weeks, just to have a change of pace and symbolize the start of a new beginning for us, one without my parents involved.